Let's talk to Joe DiGenova now. He's a legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. On the road, he's traveling. Where are you this morning, Joe?
This morning, I am in The Hague in the Netherlands.
Wow. All right, well, thank you for taking some time out, as usual, to talk to us. I don't know if you got a chance to consume. Did you see the George Stephanopolous interview with the President of the United States?
I did get to see that.
What'd you make of it?
It's wonderful to watch a short little Greek guy who works for Hillary Clinton interview the President of the United States. George is an apparatchik, a total political thug. And, of course, ABC News is no longer a news organization. They're just part of the Democratic Party. That interview was a setup. And, you know, the President did what he always does. He fought back, and there's always chaos.
Yes, there is. And there was some debate between Mueller and the President over there has been debate between Mueller and the President. But there was debate between George and the President over what the Mueller report said because George kept insisting about collusion and obstruction, that there were problems.
Well, the bottom line is Mueller concluded that there was no conspiracy or coordination by anybody in the Trump campaign with the Russians. That's the most important thing. But also, what's really fascinating is when they talk about collusion and foreign interference, every time they ask that question of the President, what he should say is the people who interfered in the election were the Democrats who went to the Ukraine government in 2016 to seek out bad information against Paul Manafort. That was the worst type of foreign corrupted interfering in an American election, not to mention Christopher Steele and the dossier.
Yeah, and what did you make of that dust-up last week? I mean, you're kind of getting into it now, but around this interview, you know, the President was asked, you know, would you accept information from a foreigner about a political opponent? The President said, sure, I would. Not only would I listen, I may even take it to the FBI. What did you think of that?
Well, the President, as usual, is his own person. I would have said it differently, but what he said was, when you looked at his complete answer, is he says, under certain circumstances, I would have gone to the FBI. Not at every time I got information. His answer was absolutely correct. And he should have added at that point that, but my goodness, George, where's your concern about the Clinton people and the Obama people going to the Ukrainians to get dirt on Paul Manafort in Ukraine? And they dealt directly with Ukrainian government officials.
And Joe, on that, do you think we are going to actually get answers when the IG report comes out, when we have different investigations that are concluded? Are we going to have more answers on the origins of the dossier and any cover-up that happened and whether or not Obama knew about it?
Well, I don't think you're going to get that out of Horowitz. And Horowitz's report is being held up, by the way, because the FBI has been withholding documents from him. And that is why the FBI was forced to respond to the new Attorney General, Bill Barr, who, as you know, sought and was given declassification authority by the President for the simple reason that the FBI and the CIA, but mostly the FBI, were obstructing the production of documents. And the President said, I'm just going to turn it over to Bill Barr. So I wouldn't expect too much from Horowitz. I think his report is going to be delayed by at least a month or two, because he has now discovered that many things were hidden from him by the FBI.
Wow, that's a pretty big timeline change, because Bill Barr had already told us that we were expecting this IG report at the end of May, beginning of June. Now you're saying an additional month or two before we see it?
Oh, I don't think there's any question now that because of the delay by the FBI and the refusal to turn over certain documents and hiding certain things, Christopher Wray has become a defender of the institution. He's become an obstacle to transparency. I think the President is extremely dissatisfied with Christopher Wray, and I think so is the Attorney General.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if the reason we haven't heard that, the President often expresses these frustrations in public. I imagine that one of the reasons we haven't heard that right now is because the President's probably thinking it's not worth the headache before the election to handle yet another FBI director. Is that the idea here?
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to happen between now and the election. I think if the President is reelected, I don't think Christopher Wray is going to be hanging around very long.
Joe, is there anything else you're hearing on this front that we should know about?
No, just that I think Mr. Durham and Mr. Barr are a very happy couple. and they're working steadily, and I expect that they're going to produce some very fascinating information, and I can't imagine right now that there aren't things involving the grand jury underway.
Yeah, a lot of interesting noises coming from your side. That's good. He's in The Hague this morning, Joe DiGenova. Joe, I want to ask you about the Supreme Court. A couple of big cases before the court as they're working through their final 2 weeks of the month of June. The biggest cases involve, let's first start with the census citizenship question. How do you think this one ends? Do we get a question about citizenship on the U.S. Census in the next census for 2020?
I don't think there's any question the way it should end, and that is that the census question should be allowed. And it was allowed for years and then stopped for a while. It's a perfectly legitimate question. There's no reason not to answer it. The only reason you don't want that question answered is if you want illegals voting in elections. And having those illegals present determine the representation in Congress, which is absolutely absurd. I think there will be a 5-4 decision in favor of allowing the citizenship question.
And meanwhile, you have Congress trying to throw a wrench in the Supreme Court's process because this past week, House Oversight and Reform Committee held the Attorney General Bill Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross. They voted to hold them in contempt over congressional subpoenas. I mean, how much can Congress influence the Supreme Court's consideration?
Well, the court can be influenced as much as it wants to be. I don't think it will be influenced by these antics by Chairman Cummings in the House. But these subpoenas and demands and threats of contempt are definitely designed to create an impression that there's something untoward in the record that the court doesn't know about and that it should not allow the question to be asked. I don't see that happening. If the court were to do that, I think it would be a terribly damaging decision by the court.
And Joe, real quick, curious of what your take is going to be on Justice Kavanaugh. Of course, this is going to be a big couple weeks for him. Do you see a lot of 5-4 decisions tilting more towards a conservative, as some would say, even though the judge or the justices are not supposed to be activists? But do you see Judge Kavanaugh making a big difference in these decisions?
Well, Kavanaugh will be a steadier conservative vote than Kennedy was and others, and I just think that his presence is going to be a stabilizing influence. I mean, the real question mark is Roberts. He always has been since the Obamacare decision, and knowing what Roberts will or won't do is very difficult to predict. His notion that there aren't Republican and Democratic judges is, of course, ludicrous. There are philosophical differences between Republicans and Democrats. He knows that, which is why he should stop talking about it and just do his job.
All right, Joe DiGenova, enjoy the Netherlands. Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
You bet.